Smoke taint. It's not just a term for the Marlboro man's saddle sores. It's a real issue in grape growing and winemaking that can devastate the vintages for an entire region. What's worse, it's becoming more and more likely as the world gets hotter and hotter. Whatever your feelings are about the causes of climate change, although it's getting harder and harder to have more than that one specific opinion about the causes of climate change, it is absolutely true that the planet is getting hotter. And with that, wildfires in certain areas are on the rise. And certain of those certain areas are vineyards, which provide the most important resource for our precious, precious wine. In a nutshell, smoke taint refers to an excess of certain compounds caused by exposure of grapes to smoke that produce unpleasant flavors in wine. These flavors are usually thought of not simply as smoky, but like cigarette ash, medicine, and burnt wood. Sort of like being given mouth to mouth by your Boy Scout camp counselor, Tom Waits. These compounds are called volatile phenols, and they're produced by burning lignin, the material that makes wood so stiff. They're airborne particles that are caused by smoke, although it's important to note that these aren't the gray particles that we associate with smoke. These are much smaller, almost microscopic. Now, here's where it gets tricky. These particles can't simply be wiped off the grape. They are absorbed into the grape skin where they bond with grape sugars to form glycosides. This process has evolved as a defense mechanism, and what's interesting is that the sugar bonding process actually makes the volatile phenols inert. Hence, when you bite into one of these grapes, you don't smell or taste the smoke, it's been neutralized. And though this sounds good, it actually makes things much harder for winemakers, as it makes it very difficult to tell whether or not a grape has been affected. You only know once you've made the wine, because it's the process of fermentation itself that releases those volatile phenols. But it doesn't stop there. They continue to develop during storage, during aging, and even in your mouth, when enzymes in your saliva cause the sudden release of these aromas. So when we look at these wine growing areas that have been heavily affected by wildfires, it's hard not to throw up our hands and write everything off. California, Australia, Oregon, Chile, and Washington State make the news quite a bit, but they're not the only important regions to deal with smoke damage. And yet, like everything else in this confusing, unreliable universe, even this is tricky, because no matter what the nature of the wildfire is, a vineyard's exposure to smoke is no guarantee of smoke taint. The further the smoke has to travel, the less concentration there is of these unwanted volatile phenols. The grapes also matter. Thicker skinned grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon seem to handle smoke damage a little bit better than thinner skinned grapes like Pinot Noir or that grape from the Fruit of the Loom commercials. Even in seemingly devastating situations, smoke exposure is still no guarantee of damage. Washington State got hit hard by wildfires in 2018, but the vintage not only escaped smoke taint, many wine drinkers consider this one of Washington State's best vintages. And yet it's estimated that only 20% of people can even smell smoke taint. So is it really that bad of a problem? Yep. The estimated cost of the 2020 wildfires to California and Oregon's wine industry is around $3.7 billion. Or to put it in terms of $2 Chuck, 1.85 billion bottles of $2 Chuck. So is there anything that can be done about it? Thankfully, yes. Even though these volatile phenols can't be smelled or tasted, chemical analysis can check for the presence of the two most common problem compounds. Moreover, modern winemaking science has developed quite a few techniques that can mitigate the effects of volatile smoke phenols on resulting wine. Many of these revolve around decreasing maceration time, where the juice soaks up color, flavor, and other compounds from the skin. One technique in particular, flash détente, involves very quickly heating the grapes up to high temperatures and moving them into a vacuum, causing color compounds to explode and saturate the juice before any unwanted compounds are absorbed. White wines, of course, are much less likely to be affected as they spend very little time, if any, on their skins. And as white wines made from red grapes like Pinot Noir, Merlot, and even Cabernet Sauvignon are becoming more popular, this remains another viable option for using tainted grapes. And of course, there are companies out there trying to solve the problem through filtration. One company in particular, called Maverick, spelled M-A-V-R-I-K, as if Tom Cruise's character from Top Gun had become a 90s rapper, claims to have invented a filtration technique that completely removes the taint. The smoke taint, not Tom Cruise's taint. Tom Cruise's taint is still, fortunately, intact.